Just one more hour until reinforcements, aka me, arrive to save the day. But until then, keep your eyes on the highway and keep on trucking with Jimmy Mack on Road Gang Radio, y'all.
Welcome to Trucking Tributes. I'm your host for Trucking Tributes, Susan Patten, and today on Trucking Tributes, I am always excited when we get to feature the women in the industry. This woman in particular is really quite a gal, and I'm excited to bring you Sherri Garner Brumbaugh with Garner Trucking out of Ohio. Sherri, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here.
We are absolutely thrilled to have you. Also joining the show today is Don Queenie. Now, many of you on Trucking Tributes know Don Queenie, formerly of Hampton Roads, well, still helping with the business, family business, Hampton Roads and Storage, but also a dear friend of Wreaths Across America, our former director of transportation until he decided to retire. But guess what? He's back and he's joining me on the show today with Sherri, and we're both going to fire off some questions. So, Sherri, let's first open it up for folks on Trucking Tributes. How is it that you came into the trucking industry to begin with?
Well, I'm a second generation trucker. The business Garner Trucking actually first started with one truck. That American dream. It was my dad. My dad was the truck driver. We had one truck. My mom was the back office. She was the accountant. She was the dispatcher, safety of the team, and she did it all from her kitchen table. The business phone rang into their home, and she dispatched my dad, and he took care of the customers, and he kept, took care of the truck, and one truck turned into two. And over the years, it's just increased to where we are today, which is about 90 trucks. So, here and there, so 65 years that we've been in business. This last year we celebrated.
That is an impressive fleet and an impressive feat to celebrate that many years in the trucking industry, which has been known to be tumultuous at times. But we're kind of joking off camera. Trucking was not your first fort, if you will. You were actually in education. Tell us a little bit about that, Sherri.
So while in high school, I mowed the lawns, and it's a family business. Everybody pitches in, and it was my summer job. Dad paid me $1.70 an hour. That was minimum wage back in the day, late 70s. I'd mow the lawn and wash trucks, and the career path for washing trucks was wash trucks, and then you could become a grease monkey, which you would grease the fifth wheels and do all the greasing of the truck. And then the next job opportunity after that was a tire man. And then from tire man, you went to a mechanic. That's what happened in our shop. I didn't see myself being a grease monkey or a tire man or a mechanic. That I didn't feel that was the career path that I wanted to take. I wanted to take education. I was in band in high school. I loved being in band and embraced everything music. And so I went off to the Ohio State University and got a degree in music education and taught.
That is wonderful. And if you're wondering out there in Trucking Tributes land, she was a percussionist. You got that, Dave Nemo. We want to thank the folks on Radio Nemo for having us on the show this morning, too, of course. And Dave being quite a percussionist himself, I'm sure that you guys have had many chats along that regard. So, Sherri, coming into the business, I mean, you didn't really choose to, life sort of chose that path for you, so to speak. Can you tell us about that evolution and how it is that you came into Garner Trucking officially?
Yeah, it was one of those. I love teaching. Uh, but it was gruel. It's a hard job. I have a much deep appreciation for teachers. I think they'll have many jewels in their crown. Just as doing the job and working with students, which was the best part of it. But I felt that I wanted the time commitment for being a band director. You didn't get your summers off. That was not band directing, especially high school band directing. And so I took a step back. I wanted to just teach elementary and junior high. Those opportunities weren't a lot in our community. I met the love of my life, who was very connected, Had, a really good job here in our hometown. And so I felt that, I really wasn't going to go back to, Columbus anymore. I embraced being married and having a family. And so the family business, I came back, and it was supposed to be temporary. And my old principal kept calling me, Sherri, there's a band director job. There's a band director job. And I'm like, hi. I kind of like working with my dad. I like being in the family business. I was able to provide some efficiencies I found some reporting that I could, do some cost savings for my dad. And he gave me that project, and he said, hey, you figured that out. How about taking on this? And so I felt that I could contribute, and here I am 36 years later.
Wow, you've been at the helm for that long. That is just remarkable. And I can only imagine when you began, even though you were brought up in the industry, familiar with trucking, and that it had to have been very intimidating, I would think. Can you think back to those
Mhm.
beginning days in the industry where you're starting to literally take charge of the trucking company and what that felt like and the processes that you went through?
Yeah, it was definitely different. I mean, I looked at my mother. I mean, she was a working in the industry when it was really, really rare. She was a spouse, but for many of the small businesses, they were working right alongside. I say today, it was Vern Garner's company. No, it was Vern and Jean. Vernon Jean and even my dad. I don't have my dad any longer. I do have my 85-year-old mother, a feisty 85-year-old, good Irish woman. She worked right along with him. And when they say, who was the founder of Garner? No, we had founders, and that was Vern and Jean Garner. My parents were very involved in the industry, as many know, on ATA, TCA, OTA, Ohio Trucking Association. And my mom would go along with my dad to many of those meetings. And, you would walk into a room and there wasn't many that carried a purse and wore lipstick. But you just had to know your stuff, and I enjoyed that, and I found my path through the ranks and those associations as well. But many of my best advocates were men. I'd be sitting along someone aside someone in a committee meeting, and I'll go, I just don't think that's just right. And they poke an elbow to me and they say, speak up. You've got a good idea. Speak up, say it. So I have found that I enjoyed being amongst those peers, challenging, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and women, I can say, being a woman, that women can bring a unique perspective to a
Yes.
company, especially one that is more heavily male dominated, to bring up some of the things. And I'm sure that you've been an incredible advocate for women coming into the
Mhm.
industry, and the fact that we're seeing more and more professional drivers and CEOs and so forth who are women in the industry. And I'm sure that you've provided great, great direction for them in that regard to things that are different. What do you think maybe is probably one of your maybe single most contributions in that regard, a perspective that you may have brought to either Garner Trucking or the industry as a whole as a woman that might be unique?
I think one of those things, maybe as a female or trying to, even these outlets, many outlets embracing and asking that question, they maybe planting a seed to young women that maybe this industry is for me. And I don't know anything going into it. I look at my HR department, my marketing, my operations, my accounting. They don't know anything about the industry, and we've taught them, and we've given them a path to have a good income, to have good training experiences. And I teach at our local university. And when I talk about supply chain and I talk about trucking industry, and if you're going in accounting or marketing, take your pinpoint anywhere, outside of the United States, inside of the United States, put a pinpoint. Where do you want to be? Trucking is there, logistics is there, supply chain is there. You can do it. So it's the door that will open, it's the gateway to open a lifelong career and happiness.
I'm just so impressed by you, Sherri, with Garner Transportation Group, and they are out of Ohio. And Sherri has been at the helm for many years now and leading the transportation industry as an industry leader for sure. And really, really impressed with her evolution into the company and the things that she's been doing. You are listening to Trunking Tributes. It's heard on Radio Nemo. Thanks to the folks there as well. I'm your host, Susan Patten, and sitting quietly behind is Dawn Queenie. Dawn, I bet you've already got a couple of questions for Sherri.
Well, I do. And I want to say, Sherri, thanks for being with us. And thank you for everything that you do for the industry, as well as our mission. Actually, I'm a proponent of women in trucking in the sense that actually my wife runs our small trucking company today.
Mhm.
I stepped back a few years ago so my son could spread his wings, if you will, and do what he wanted to do. And so my wife helps keep him in check and runs our business day to day. And when Susan asked you about your contribution, my wife's contribution came to mind, and I bet you also have that, and that is a sense of compassion for the trials and tribulations of the truck driver and all of your employees, from the grease monkeys you mentioned all the way on, and not having the hard line that some men will have. And as Susan said, she's a woman, she can relate. I'm a man, I can relate. And sometimes the man's point of view is it's my way or the highway. And I believe that, I know that my wife, and I would believe that you too offer that extra sense of compassion and take a look at things that maybe might retain a driver or retain an accountant or retain a good grease monkey, to use your term, that helps your company flourish. And I bet I'm correct on that.
Yeah. People, people drive this business. We wouldn't have a business if it weren't for our people. So it is important to take care of them. They are the number one proponents.
Yeah.
They are the most dedicated. Sometimes you're right. You've got to take care of their families. It's a hard job, especially for our truck driving community, our fleet of drivers, whether it's male or female. It's that the home somebody has to keep the home fires going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's a relationship business, and you have to have compassion for what struggles. It's hard. No, it doesn't have to be this hard. So let's try to enjoy what each other and do what we
Yeah.
can
I
be.
couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, especially on Trucking Tributes, is our professional drivers. And we're here really to talk about Wreaths Across America and our professional drivers. Sherri, thank you for all of that background on your evolution into the leadership role that you have at Garner Trucking. But tell us a little bit more about Garner Trucking. How do you operate? Where do you operate? And then
Mhm.
let's talk about how you first learned about Wreaths Across America.
Right. We are located in Northwest Ohio, Findlay, Ohio, about 100 miles south of Detroit, Michigan, about 50 miles south of Toledo. So up in that crook of Northwest Ohio, we service mostly the upper Midwest. We're a dry truckload carrier. We'd like to stay east of the Mississippi, but there are a few of our customers that will stretch our legs. We have some drivers that like to stretch our legs. Even going up to Maine really isn't in our footprint. But I'll tell Karen Woosterberry, it's so funny because we have tracking on our trucks, and you'll see a cluster of trucks, pretty much around 350-mile radius of Northwest Ohio, which gets us, kind of mid-state New York, Pennsylvania. And during Wreaths Across America time, you'll see our trucks, and you see these two trucks up here in Maine coming down the East Coast, down by New York City and to DC, which is very much out of our footprint. So we kind of get a chuckle out of that. So, but Upper Midwest retail distribution, just trying to stay in that lane.
So while you're in that lane and you're up north, it's almost like tracking Santa on NORAD, I would
It
think,
is.
trucks out there. But how did you get in touch with Wreaths Across America?
So we members of Truckload Carriers Association for several years, and watched several of my peers from Ohio and then across the country participating in Wreaths Across America. And I just felt compelled, especially the veteran component. I have several drivers that are veterans. I knew that they would embrace this. And so that I don't, we started just doing the Maine to Arlington Cemetery. We did that for 2 years, and for several years, I wanted to bring it back to our community here in Northwest Ohio and our cemeteries, and that's a great story in itself. But really, Truckload Carries Association wanted to give back to this effort, wanted to be part of my peers. It doesn't happen without trucking. And so to be part of that was important to me.
It absolutely does not. Thank you very much. And it's almost an understatement, Sherri, that Wreaths Across America's mission to remember our fallen, honor those who serve, and teach younger generations the value of freedom absolutely does not happen without the trucking industry. And we always, always, always are in a position of needing trucks, big trucks, small trucks, any trucks that we can get that we can fill. As our director of transportation, Courtney George, is always reminding us, she can't fill a tanker, she can't fill a flatbed, but we've got so many relationships. If you've got the tractor, we may have the trailer, and so on and so forth. So you should never, ever let a concern like that be an obstacle, because the transportation division at Wreaths Across America is absolutely exceptional. And they make, as you said, it's a relationships business, right? As is the Wreaths mission. So they make it possible. If you want to haul and become a member of our honor fleet for Wreaths Across America, we are going to try to find a way to make it happen. Now, you had the Arlington trip, but then you talked about wanting to expand and bringing the mission to your neighborhood. And you've been extremely successful in doing that.
Mhm.
And for several years now, you told me about a milestone when we were emailing back and forth. So let's talk about that a little.
Yeah, last year we celebrated 10 years bringing wreaths back to Northwest Ohio to our hometown cemetery here in Maple Grove. It started with that cemetery, approximately 20, they don't keep great records at our some of our cemeteries with our veterans, ours, but it started out with my son and his Eagle Scout project. And the very first, so he went out in the fall prior to ordering wreaths and walked the cemetery and with a clicker counted how as many of the veterans he could from headstones from either there's some stands that stand beside um, our headstones that are veterans that depict what branch of the military they served. And he went through and clicked, and it came around to about 2,800 veterans in our cemetery, which was a daunting task to take on. And so he raised the money. He went through all the process of what an Eagle Scout has to do. And we raised enough to put 600 wreaths down that very first year. And he organized all the volunteers. He did all the marketing, and it was a small effort. To today, now there are approximately 3,200 over that course of 10 years. We're up to about 3,000 to 3,200 veterans that are buried in our cemetery, and so we have enough to cover that every year with those efforts. Now he's gone on to leave the community, but if you're an Eagle Scout, you always want to take on a project that will stay if you leave the community, and it's still here 10 years later. Now the 11 years, this year we celebrate 11 years.
Such a great example of teach, too, bringing it back
Yes.
to the younger generation to let them know the value of saying their names and making sure
Yes.
that these people are remembered and honored. And then he can take it on to another community and another community. And so grows the mission of Wreaths Across America. It truly is and has been for the last several years a grassroots mission that people get involved. They fall in love with the mission to remember, honor, and teach. They get that personal experience by going out and participating in a wreath laying ceremony, and they are able to then volunteer and step forward. And anyone Anyone can volunteer to become a location coordinator for Wreaths Across America. You need to step up. You need to say, hey, I will do it. You need to contact your local cemetery and get permission, of course, because we are guests at our participating locations. And it does not need to be a national cemetery. It can be a local community cemetery, as Sherri has described. It can be a memorial or a monument. And we've had all of those locations. So in 2025, Sherri, can you imagine? Hard for me to even say the words. We are at over 5,300 participating locations, and that's in addition to Arlington National Cemetery. So the need for trucks absolutely continues. I'm Susan Patten, your host for Trucking Tributes. You are listening to Sherri Garner Brumbaugh. She is the president, CEO, and owner of Garner Transportation Group out of Ohio. They have done the annual escort. Can you believe that's like less than, well, it's about 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
Dawn, Queenie, I just got palpitations. Take over here.
I've been on that. I've been on that
What
truck.
was your experience, Sherri? Share
It
it.
was great. It was wonderful. It was back 2014. It was the second year that we had participated in Arlington. We hadn't brought wreaths back to Ohio yet. If I could add too, so that one in our community, that one cemetery has now grown to 7 cemeteries in our community. So we're bringing a full truckload of wreaths just back to Northwest, just Hancock County, really, our county. We partner, collaborate with our Veteran Service Center here. They do all of our marketing for us, all of our support in that regard, and kind of bring us together as a community. And we've helped, those of us that have done it year after year, we've helped a new cemetery come on. We brought in 2 new cemeteries this year. So just super excited about, to your point, that the outreach of that it can be. And on the day of laying, it's unbelievable, the people that come in from young to old, that can understand and relate to giving thanks and what the meaning of being a veteran, that the freedoms that our veterans fought for.
And Sherri, so many have told us, especially in the trucking industry, but abroad as well, outside of the trucking industry, that you may know of Wreaths Across America, you may have heard of Wreaths Across America, but until you participate in Wreaths Across America, you don't really grasp the depth of the meaning behind the mission to remember, honor, and teach, and how much it means to those families. I am also joined, Sherri and I are joined by Dawn Queenie. Dawn Queenie, no stranger at all to the trucking industry, in fact, or to Wreaths Across America. And Dawn will be taking over the job of Trucking Tributes, which excites me to no end. And I'm very excited about that because I will be stepping away in retirement in December after the Wreath Escort. And so Dawn is going to be doing the shows moving forward. Dawn, I know that you got another question.
Well, I want to say you may be excited, but I'm petrified.
Oh,
So
stop.
we'll start with that. And keep in mind, I'm not the only ones. Let's make sure that your role is requiring a couple of people to cover what you did for Trucking Tribute. So keep that in mind. And we're gonna be we're going to miss you, and I'm going to be leaning on you for some advice from time to time. But Sherri, I know that escort to Arlington is quite the moving experience. And by the way, anytime I can interject the word moving, I do so because my family and I own a almost 37-year-old moving and storage business. So I interject the word moving anytime I can. There, I just did it again. But anyway, Sherri, the other side of the coin, when I was director of transportation, was trying to get the experience for the driver, the actual person behind the wheel, picking the wreaths up, transporting them, and or delivering them. And we wanted to be sure that we never missed the opportunity, because in some cases we knew that the driver that actually was there picking the wreaths up may not be the one making the delivery. Or who knows what. There's various different ways that various companies will handle that. And you did mention that you use your veteran drivers whenever you can. I was curious to know if anybody has ever come back to you and talked about the experience loading, whether it was a terrible fiasco or whether it was a beautiful thing, and how you were treated, because it's important to us to make sure that that first mile is important, because we could really lose a carrier, we could lose a driver's enthusiasm if that's not a good experience. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's a whole lot better than it was 10 years ago. And I think too, the investment that has gone into, preparing, staging the loads, getting the drivers in and out, that has improved tenfold. I don't, any driver, and here's the true test. And of course, the museum, how they take care of the drivers, like it pales in the comparison to my driver lounge. I mean, it just, I can't even, I mean, and I have a nice driver's lounge, but and the drivers that have gone on this, they're like, we have a nice driver's lounge, but man, those Wreaths Across America people, they know how to do it, So, but if it was a fiasco, if it was such a terrible experience, I wouldn't have drivers ask to go back. So on occasion, we always try to send our driver of the year up to do the main back to
Yes,
Finley,
that's one of the ways you do it. Yeah.
or a veteran, or especially we try to get a veteran to do the main to Arlington National Cemetery to experience that, and then the driver, reception dinner that they do the night before is just, over the top. And they just come, our drivers, unfortunately, our driving workforce they aren't treated the best out on the road. They really aren't. They,
We all know.
back in the 50s and 60s, they were the knights of the road, right? And during COVID, they were deemed essential, and boy, that just lifted their spirit. Now we're right back to, it's not a glam job. So anytime that we can make the job easier for them, and you certainly have made it much better up there.
Well, that's good to hear, because we have invested, excuse me, in infrastructure and in time, and we have a host of volunteers now that handhold the drivers as they come in and make sure that they have what they need and what have you. And I will tell you, when I was director of transportation, I'm sure you've got a couple of recruiters in your office there, and I had gotten a call my last year. I did it for 4 years. My last year, things had been moving along, and I bet I had about a call a month from a recruiter that some of them might have been a little perturbed, saying to me, "What in the world is this Wreaths Across America?" And I'm like, "Oh, what's the matter, buddy? What happened? What's wrong?" And he would say, "Well, I just had the third driver this month walk out of my office and say that if he couldn't haul for Wreaths Across America this year, he wasn't signing his sign-up papers. He wasn't going to come over." And I'm like, "Oh, then we must be doing something right." So,
Yeah.
so when guys and gals that are actually, taking the time to haul the wreaths and doing the work and protecting that load are wanting to do it, that was our goal. So it must be working for you, and it's working for others. So that's good news.
That's marvelous to hear. And we do work off that feedback to the best of our ability. We try to improve every year and make things comfortable. And the one thing that gives Don Queenie and myself and the rest of the team at Wreaths Across America absolute goosebumps is when we hear professional drivers say they treated us like kings and queens. And by golly, now we know we're absolutely doing something right. And, to us, they are kings and queens, because the mission would never move forward. And it keeps moving forward. That's our slogan for this year. Keep moving forward. And it does, because of the transportation industry. Don Queenie, the one thing that you're going to be the most terrified about doing trucking tributes is the fact that the half hour goes just like that.
Yeah.
And so we are at the end of our time with Sherri Garner Brumbaugh with Garner Transportation out of Ohio. Sherri, just our deepest, deepest gratitude and thanks for you and your carrier company and your employees for supporting the mission to remember, honor, and teach with not only the annual wreath escort to Arlington, but bringing the mission back to your community in Ohio. That is extra special. Thank you so much for joining us today on Trucking Tributes.
Thank you for including me, and I look forward. This is the highlight. I can, after National Lane Wreath Day, I always feel now I can have Christmas with my family.
Right. You can settle in and settle down as it is for a little while. Again,
I pray for good weather.
yes, please. All the way up and down the east.
All the way up and down.
And over toward Ohio as well. Pray for good weather. That's the mantra. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.